You cool?
It was cool.
Are you cool?
No, I have a jacket right there if I get cold. And be good. So how many of you dreamed of living in a house with secret passages? Ah, that's been a dream of mine. Someday I'm gonna buy me.
Yeah, you're already in there.
This is it. This is the secret passage.
That's.
Lets you through to the other world.
Take a seat at the other news. Is it something that we would all want to go to?
Sure, this table is round, look like food might be mixed like this.
You want it somewhere or something?
It's needed.
Okay. Guys,
If you already had a timer, then I would just want to pay attention to what. But I'm pretty sure I'll be done way before my time is up.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, because this is everything I know about storytelling, so 15 minutes and we'll be done. Hopefully I've put together a presentation that will mean something to you and be able to take some of this information home.
I came to hear a long story. A long story.
Well, I do have a short story about a long gravel road. Let's see.
Yes, that was a champion speech.
Third place. That's the year my
I
father.
think that was the best speech.
I loved it. I know it was the first place speech, but
I know.
I didn't give the judges enough money. I don't know what to do.
your right was big.
Yeah, you need to keep hundreds in your pocket.
Well, it's usually $5, but since you don't know who the judges are, I just hand the $5 out to everybody. It's expensive. Oh, this one. Yeah. It's seamless. Seamless. People, such a popular guy. Oh, yeah, really, folks call me all the time. They want to help me with my car insurance to my extended warranty. Nowadays, at my age, they're constantly calling me and wanting to sign me up for some Medicare Advantage.
Yeah.
There you go.
I told them I'm not planning on getting sick. And then they instill me with fear. But what if you do? And I tell them, what if I die? What happens then? I don't have to pay any medical things. It's cheaper.
That's.
It's cheaper to die. I've looked into it. It's 1 fee. You can get the casket and everything.
Yes.
Especially for your beneficiary.
So when my father passed away, he was not a wealthy man. He didn't save up a whole lot of money, and I could kind of tell. And I walked over to his casket, it looked so cool. And then I knocked on it. That's cardboard. Wow, they can do a lot of cool stuff with cardboard. Then I figured, well, they're gonna bury it in the ground. It won't be cardboard.
Exactly. Yeah, you could have had a humorous speech yesterday.
Well, I'm working on something for next year.
Okay.
Because next year, the speeches are live and in person. I tried the Zoom speaking and I couldn't do it because the first thing the Toastmaster says is, everyone turn off your screen. I just lost the audio. Everyone turn off your audio. I now no longer get feedback. I'm in my office talking to a little black box full of dark images and I couldn't do it. I just said, no, this is not what I came to Toastmasters. I'm trying to learn how to be a stand-up comedian, but I just don't like the hours. Most of the clubs say, show up at 11 and we'll see about putting you on. At 11, I went to bed at 9. I'm not showing up anywhere at 11. Why? Right.
Jim, what year did you win the Humorous Novel? Remember what year that was?
2013. my third year as a Toastmasters, what I've learned is people join Toastmasters and almost immediately they go into the contest. Because when I do the interviews, they go, how long have you been on Toastmasters? 1 year, 6 months, 2 years. And after they've been in for 5 years, like, this is too much like work. I enjoy it. I really like the contest. 1 year, I was so shocked. Club level. I'm doing a speech. I thought, this is it. And Richard Guerrero, one of my members, he does a speech. And I'm thinking, Richard is a terrible speaker. He wins first place. How did this happen? I didn't write the judges enough. So he goes on to area, and I gave him a few pointers here. Try adding this line in your presentation. And he added it, and I thought it really enhanced. But he did not win first place in the area. No, it wasn't because of that line. The line was this: Richard is getting up in years like me, and his line was, and I don't look at it over 70. Because he was like 71. Oh, I know you find this hard because I don't look 70%. And that worked out well in his speech. But when you're up against competition and other people are this bad, there it is. There's always the front row, but you might have to strain your neck. So if you take all the front row chairs and put them on the front row, then those people who wanted to sit on the back row, too bad. They are out of luck.
Front row of the movie, bigger than life.
Now, when Star Trek: The Motion Picture first came out, 1978, I know, 100 years ago, I was so enamored with the TV show that I had to go and I wanted to see the ship in all its glory. So I did. I sat on the front row and the camera pans across this ship slowly and I was eating it up because there I was looking as if I'm actually sitting in space watching this ship. And that was so cool. I've since seen it on the TV and what a letdown. It was so cool after the I really love it. Now, there are a lot of parts of that movie that I didn't like because we retrofitted the ship. Okay, but we retrofitted this hotel, but the homes are still the same. It looks the same. It's just a different color. And that ship, they changed it so much. I was a little disappointed. At least they kept the cap. So while I'm rambling on, my son and I took a trip to New York State. It was an antique car road rally. Bring your antique car, meet in Syracuse, New York. They'll all meet at this hotel, and then we will drive from venue to venue in upstate New York. Well, Jason has a 1967 Ford Mustang that he rescued from a field and rebuilt multiple times. That's another story. We were going to trailer this car up to upstate New York, but his truck was not cooperating. So we decided we'll drive as far as we can toward Syracuse in a 1967 Ford Mustang. We were certain we would get 11 miles to the gallon, and the gas gauge was not exactly working well. So every time it got around half, we stopped and filled up. But that's not the point of the story. The whole reason we're driving to upstate New York is one of the venues that's on there is the original set from Star Trek, the television show. Some guy who lost his mind decided he would recreate this set in accurate detail. Now, he was an Elvis impersonator, which is how he funded most of this. And when you go there, you see Elvis in the Star Trek. That was interesting, but Jason saw that on the lineup. There's a museum, there's this fancy place, the ship museum, and Star Trek. We're going. We didn't care about the rest of that. It was interesting, but that was the highlight. So we went, and the night before, he bought me a Captain Kirk shirt on Amazon. So you know it won't survive one in the washing machine. But that was I was full of it.
I'm talking to Grace behind her back.
Okay. So that night, I put on my Star Trek shirt, we got to the set, we walked around, Jason and I were, most of the people in our group were old people. Now, not that I'm not old, but they were older than me, they're well retired, they're driving 1925 Duesenbergs and stuff like that. And we were walking through this set, and these people were going, I don't see the draw. So that was really neat. We had a great time.
Excuse me. We're all here to learn,
We are,
okay? I'm hard of hearing.
okay?
What do you say?
So it's Doug.
I don't know how many other in here are senior citizens or have hearing loss. Okay,
I do, but I'm wearing my hearing aid.
but I have hearing aids too.
Just left them in the room.
But the biggest problem on speakers and what I ran into in the speech contest last night.
Yeah.
They all talk too fast.
Okay, so just like speaking to foreign people, if you just talk slower,
Yeah.
you don't have to talk louder, just slower,
Just slower, and
slower,
your speech needs to be slowed a little bit.
slow. Well,
Now, I realize you have a schedule.
when I start, I don't have to speak fast. We have plenty of time.
But see, I'm interested in what you're trying to tell
And I will tell you nice and slow. So far, I've just been filling time with some rambling story. When I do that,
me. No, but it would be a very interesting story, I'm sure, or you wouldn't be giving it.
I don't know, sometimes I ramble.
He does. See, what happens, the sound comes in my ear, but when it gets into my brain, it's a jumble.
Yeah,
I have no idea what is being said.
I know the feeling. Yeah, I start going fast. If you just raise 2 fingers or something like that, I will be reminded, and I will slow down. And it says, it's 9 o'clock.
Let's do this in 30 seconds.
And 30 seconds. So welcome everyone to award-winning storytelling, or whatever it said in the bulletin. My name is Jim Lowry. I've been in speech contests probably since my first year Toastmasters. And I really enjoyed the speech contest. But the thing I enjoy most is crafting stories. What makes a good story? All watched movies or read books. Give you a couple of things. A good story captures the attention of your audience. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and then I'm going back to checking my email on my phone because it's important. I have things to do. I'm an important person. People are always, see, I got 2 people already checking their email. I have been checked out. It happens.
So I just turned my hearing aids up so I could hear better.
Thank you. On the phone, this technology blows me away. Every day I learn something new. I got a couple of places up front, some in the middle, and there will always be standing room in the back if you get too many people. So here's an example of a good opening, or what I think is a good opening. It was a warm, sunny spring afternoon, and the park was filled with activity. The sound of birds filled the air, little children laughing, playing ball, people slowly walking their dogs. In the middle of it all, a couple sat on the park bench, enjoying the day. He handed her a small brown paper bag and said, "Let's get ready." So did it paint any pictures? Did it capture some of your attention? Doug doesn't. Lots of descriptors, a lot of sound. I heard the children laughing, and I'm intrigued. What's in the brown paper bag? Is she about to get sick? So that's another story for another day. What's another aspect of a good story? A good story connects with your audience. Let's have a show of hands. Who has ever had an encounter with a raccoon?
A raccoon?
A raccoon. Most of the people in here have had one walk up or driven by them. Raccoons are almost an integrated part of our society because they can live with us. They dig in our trash and things like that. One of my encounters with a raccoon went something like this. I wiped the sleep from my eyes and slowly things started to come into focus. 3 inches from my face, I could make out 2 beady eyes, ball of whiskers, a ball of fur, and more whiskers than a wino. It was a dog. It was. So that was a story when I was camping and a raccoon came into my tent in the middle of the night. Like, now that'll wake you up. So that is an example of an encounter that other people may have. What other aspect makes a good story? Story is captivating or memorable. Does your story contain mental images that have staying power, images that stay in your mind long after the story is done? Maybe somebody on the stage grabs their shirt, pulls it open like Superman, and all of a sudden they're in a Bono concert. Yeah. Just for your edification, if Bono walked in the room, I wouldn't know. If you played me 3 or 4 of his songs, I might say, oh, I know that song, but I don't know who's singing, and that's okay. It's okay if I'm not a Bono fan. I mean, maybe I am a Bono. I did a speech back in 2013 entitled The Long. Came in 3rd place. I was robbed. I got over it. That's why I'm mentioning it now, 11 years later. It's not bothering me. No, I always think that being a judge is really difficult, and whatever you guys come up with, I'll win. And so in that story, a young man had to overcome his biggest fear. He had to bring pie that his mother had made to a neighbor, and this neighbor was very scary. He was a scary old man who lived in a big old rundown house at the end of a long break. Years later, people tell me they remember that speech. Really? What do you remember? I remember the pie. The pie? That wasn't what that speech was about. It was about overcoming fear. But you remember the pie? Be a little careful on your props because that might be all they're gonna do. Now, I'll be giving that speech later on as an example of storytelling, and we'll get to hear it in its entirety, not the Cambridge one. All right, the last thing I'm going to say about a good story is a good story communicates a message. If you have this really cool story and it ends with, that's all folks, might as well be doing a Looney Tunes cartoon. Oh, some of y'all are old enough to remember those, where at the end, that's what they would play. So what are you trying to say, and what do you want your audience members to take away? Never give up in the face of adversity. Go camping, have an adventure with your kids or family members. Overcome your fear. Or see the world from a whole different perspective. Things aren't always as they seem. This message should be brief. You should be able to write it on the back of a business. So those examples I just gave, see the world from a different perspective. Overcome your fear. I can fit that in business. A good story captures, connects, is captivating, and communicates. Just like a foundation company uses concrete, carpenter uses lumber, and a mason uses bricks, we too have many building blocks to create our. The first piece, the cornerstone, if you will, is the title. The title creates audience anticipation. How many of you ever went to the half-price bookstore and were thumbing through the books and you saw one with a title that intrigued you, and it intrigued you enough to remove the book from the shelf? That's step one, and open to the first page and maybe read a paragraph and then decide to buy it. But it was the title that caused you to come in. How many of you came into this class because of the title? I should work on it. Never underestimate the power of a good title. Sure, we want to surprise the audience. We want to give them one thing, then title one thing and then give them something else. But I think the title is not the place for the surprise. Somewhere in the presentation is where the surprise can be. That title is your advertisement. Come in, listen to a story about this. When we do our speech contest, we give title to the Toastmaster. And of course, in that case, that title shouldn't be really long. It should be really good. The second building block that we have at our disposal are the characters. Who's this story about? For that, we need to introduce our characters to the audience. Give them names. That's easier to remember rather than my brother-in-law's sister's uncle. Just call them. You're at a dinner party chatting with a small group of people and a friend of yours walks up. Now this person doesn't know the other people. What's the first thing that you normally do? You shaking the person's hand that walked up? Remember, this person walked up, you've got a group, now everybody's awkward. You introduce this character to these characters, and that's what you want to do with your audience. You want to introduce your characters. They gotta know who's in this story. So don't leave your audience hanging. Introduce the characters. The characters answer the question, who? The third building block is the location of your story. It happened one day, but we're not going to tell you where. We had a Bono concert. You know where that happened? We had someone eating wasabi in the back of a van. I could see that right there. Except if I was the kid, I would have opened it and then ate my beef before he came forward. I'm not letting them get first choice. I did all the work. A story without a location is missing flavor. I make a very bland steak. It's in the pressure cooker, so it's real tender, but it is bland. It is missing some flavor, but at least it's edible for a guy with very little cheese. So where does this story take place? In the park, in an alley, or a neighborhood where you grew up? Maybe describe the neighborhood a little bit. For that, we need to set the scene, and the scene answers the question, where? Next, we need to talk about our setting. Does this story take place in the 1800s? Did it happen when you were young? When I was young, this happened. So we've kind of set, you take a look at you and go, oh, that was 1850. Did it happen in the spring, fall, winter? That's where our setting comes in and it answers the question, when? Is your story a love story? Does it involve overcoming obstacles or fear? How do the characters feel? How does the audience feel? Remember one thing, your audience will empathize with you. It's a human trait. We all do it. We get excited when the speaker is excited. We get sad when the speaker is sad. We empathize. If you fell down and cut your elbow, I'm going to feel it. Ow! But we empathize with the people we're with. Emotions tell us how the characters feel and allow us, like I said, to empathize with them. All right, so that's content is what's the story about. Then, if we just left it at there's a conflict and we walk away, then our story has not progressed. The part of the story that gets kind of crazy is the escalation of the conflict. This is bad. So escalation, without that escalation, you got no reason in your story for what comes next. If a bully in school picks on you one time and never again, it doesn't make much sense. I can tell you about that in the 8th grade. A bully picked on me one time, and that was it. We never really had a escalation of the conflict. But if that bully continues his attention and it escalates, now you've got story. You can do something about that escalation. You can bring your pistol down. But you could take it to the vice principal's office and say, hey, this guy continues to bother me. Now you've got something, a story that has some meaning. And the final building block is the resolution of that conflict. So when I mentioned without the escalation, you have no reason for what comes next. The resolution is what comes next. How do we solve this problem? It's not going to go away on its own. The bully only picked on you once, it went away. He keeps it up. It's not. All good stories answer these questions. Who, where, when, how, and what. That's our resolution. Got that. And all right, here we are. So let's go back and talk about the title in a little more detail. Here are a few titles from well-known authors of short stories. They weren't well-known to me until I wrote them down. Now I know their meaning from the author really well. So here's the title, My Last Attempt to Explain to You What Happened to the Lion Tamer Thought. It's a short story by Brandon Matthews. I don't know Brandon, I never read this story, but that's a title I can sink my teeth. Would you be interested in learning what happened to the Lion Tamer? You might not. My wife doesn't like scary movies. She doesn't care much for zombie apocalypses.
A little louder.
A little bit louder. Is that better?
Yeah.
I will try to keep that in mind. Here's another one. The Strange Ride of Morobe Jukes. Now, that's got a few words in it that I recognize. All right, so there's a guy's name, don't know him, and there's ride, and it's strange. It brings some questions to mind. I may not pick this short story up and read it, but what is he riding? And what's strange about it? And where is he going? So I have some questions. Oh, that one's written by Ray Bradbury, so even the author would make me pick that one up because In high school, we were required to read Ray Bradbury stories, so I'm familiar with the author's name. So, would you read that story? It came across your email? Maybe. I can give you 30 seconds and then decide whether I'm going to turn that. How about this one? Hate, youth, Paris, and the moon. Kind of depends on how you say that title. But it sounds a little romantic. Although it could be a story about a young werewolf in France. So these are titles that may grab your attention enough to get past the first couple of pages. And here's another Ray Bradbury, maybe you had to read this in high school, Fahrenheit 454. This is Hot Topic. I'm thinking something's burning, so maybe it's a story about how to burn a pizza in under 1 minute. No. But the title could be compelling. I was fortunate to read it, so that's a high school thing. So even if you never read these short stories, the title might compel you to lean in a little closer. Characters. So how memorable were the characters from the following movies? Now we're talking about motion pictures or books. You may have read The Wizard of Oz. Who are some of the characters from The Wizard of Oz? Dorothy.
Toto.
Oh,
Wicked Witch of
the Wicked Witch of the West. Who was that?
Yes, Glinda.
The Scarecrow.
Glinda.
Glinda. Forgot all about her. We got the Tin Man.
And the Cowardly
And
Lion.
the Cowardly Lion. So we remember the characters, even if we don't remember exactly what they did. All right, how about this one? Star Wars. And I'm not talking about all the movies that have been made over years. Let's just go to the first one.
That big.
Darth Vader. Who else we got?
R2D.
R2D2.
Chewbacca.
Man of very few words. Chewbacca.
C-3PO.
C-3PO.
Luke.
Luke. I am your father, Luke. What always puzzled me, and it never really bothered me, is Chewbacca would talk to Han Solo, and Han would answer him like, I know exactly what you're saying. None of us know. It's a little like the Minions. They don't speak English. I don't know what they speak, but we understand them. Okay, we'll live with that. All right, I have one more movie that you might remember. Titanic. Now, I didn't realize this was an old movie. Isn't it the king of the world? Okay. Well, she was out front, wasn't she? So yes, we can go with that. So we had Jack, we had Rose, we had the captain, we had that guy on deck who, after shooting someone, and shot himself and fell in the water. We had all those people in steerage that couldn't get out. And wouldn't have really mattered if they had got out, and wouldn't have got left on the lifeboats. So characters, very important to the movie. So during the next section of our time, I'm going to share with you a story. And then afterwards, we're going to analyze that story for the characters, the minor characters, the scene, the setting, the conflict, some emotion, a little escalation, and resolution. We're here till 9:45. All right, we're good. Yep.
Question.
Yep.
Well, you said name your characters. How many names in a speech do you think is too many for them to juggle?
I'm guessing. I'm throwing that out there. 5 names to juggle. If you have more than that, then you've got a crowd, and maybe you give them, and the crowd goes crazy. So I don't want to give them more than 5. I think in this next speech, there might be 5. Some of them are minor characters. minor character mentioned. All right, so I'm gonna do this. This was my 2013 award-winning speech. When you win third place, it's still an award.
Very best.
Samuel P. Johnson. I doubt any of you have ever heard of him. He was an old man who lived in a big rundown house at the end of a long gravel road near the neighborhood. I was in junior high, and old man Johnson had a reputation that circulated among the other students. According to the rumors, he would sit on his front porch with a shotgun in his lap, ready to shoot anyone who dare venture down. Then he would drag the body inside. Never heard from him. When Billy Carmichael didn't come back to school after spring break, we thought surely old man Johnson got it. We found out later that his family had moved next. I had my first encounter with Mr. Johnson when I was 13 years old. I remember it as if it were yesterday. It was a Saturday morning, the first day of summer vacation. I was going swimming with Charlie and Bruce, my buddies, down at the river. I got up early, bounded down the stairs, and was halfway through the kitchen when my mother spotted me. Hold it right there. Just where do you think I'm going in such a... I'm going swimming with Charlie and Bruce at the river. Not yet, you know. I need you to run the water for me first. I need you to take this fresh baked apple pie over to Mr. Johnson. You mean old man Johnson that lives at the end of the long gravel road? Yes, Mr. Johnson. Now step to it. I took headed out the back door. To my certain doom, as I started down that long gravel road, fear began to well up inside me. At the halfway point, I thought about sitting down right there and eating that whole pie myself. And then going home and telling my mother, Mr. Johnson ripped my pie. But my mother had a way of knowing when you were lying. And I'd rather face old man Johnson's shotgun than caught in a lie. I continued. Fear inside me slowed my footsteps to a crawl. The gravel beneath my feet crunched loudly. After what seemed like an eternity, I finally reached the base of the 4 steps that led to the wide front porch and began my time. 1, 2, 3, 4. When my foot landed on the porch, it pressed down on a loose board that made a loud creak. I looked down at my foot, then up at the door. The door, it was a screen door. The main door was wide open to the inside. I hadn't noticed that before. Suddenly, there was a man at the door. It was old man Johnson. As I stood there trembling, he said, "What can I do?" That's my parents. It's for you. My mom thought you would like it. Well, as long as you're here, won't you? I'm inside. I'd rather not. As Mr. Johnson stepped to my right and opened the screen door, that's when I saw it. There, right behind him on the shelf, was a gleaming, bright red car, a model car. And I said, "Wow, what is that?" That, my good man, is a scale model of a 1956 Ford Type. Where did you get it? I made it. You made that? Yes, when I worked in the model shop. I'm very proud of the detail that especially under the hood, the engines. Can I see it? Help yourself. As I moved closer to my fear began to subside. And Mr. Johnson said, as long as you were inside, would you like a slice of pie? It smells so good. I hear your mama makes the best apple pie in the county. As Mr. Johnson and I ate our pie, he showed me photo albums of other cars that he made. I was 13 years old, next to girls I was most fascinated with cars. So much so that I forgot all about Charlie and Bruce and Rick. I spent that entire Saturday with Mr. Johnson. In fact, I spent nearly every Saturday that summer with Mr. Johnson. He would take me out back to his dusty workshop and we would build crude models of old cars. Oh, nothing like the gleaming Thunderbird from the shelf. But to me, each one was. Sometimes, with each visit, he would teach me something new. And sometimes we would just sit on the front porch and drink great soda and talk about girls. That summer was a real turning point. I've forgotten most of what I learned in school that year, but I never forgot Mr. Johnson. He taught me what's possible if you don't allow fear to determine your destiny. Once in a lifetime, if you're lucky, an opportunity like that comes along that can change your life. The question is, are you willing to take it? Yeah. Yeah. Doug is sold. Okay, so we're gonna chop the story up. What was the title? Compel you to hear more. I mean, it's pretty generic.
Same kind of rock.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit. I reworked that title multiple times, and I keep coming back to no, just the long gravel road. Mystery at the end of the long gravel road, Mr. Johnson in the long gravel road. So I just left it nice and short, especially if you're doing the contest, because the Toastmaster only has that. They're easy words to say and easy words to understand. Who were the main characters, people you met the most?
Johnson.
And the boy. So those were the two main characters. There was the mom. I call her a minor character because you only see her once, but without her, the other two things wouldn't happen. If nobody baked the pie, nothing would happen. Then there's other minor characters, Charlie and Bruce, give me a reason to go down to the river. Let's not forget Billy Conway. Because he's the one that expanded the rumor that old Johnson is not a person to be reckoned with. All right, so what was the scene? I have a picture in my mind. Country.
Yeah.
Summer.
Summer, yeah, first day of summer vacation. So here's how it played out in my mind. Old Man Johnson was this guy who had land before the developers moved in and said, I will not see. I got my house, I got my road, I'm not moving. You can build all your big houses if you want, but I'm not moving. And that compelled the rumor that he was not to be reckoned. So we did the setting, summer, junior high, young. What was the initial conflict? The initial conflict in the story.
We had to go.
We had to go,
And
so it was fear.
Yeah.
Fear inside me that worked all the way down that road. Oh no, how many of you have ever had to do something and I don't want to do that because I'm afraid. Speech contest, your first speech in Toastmasters, and you find out afterwards that wasn't as bad as I made it out. That's part of that fear. And then let's talk a little bit about emotions in the story. Very first emotion comes to my mind. Bounded down the kitchen, down the stairs, halfway through the kitchen. There's an excited young man to go do something fun. I've been stuck in school all year and finally I get to go do something fun. And then the second emotion that he has is, oh, Mom, I want to go do something fun. I don't want to do what you say I'm going to do. Okay, then he has some apathy for his mom. She said, do me this favor, all right, because you're my mom and you've been good to me and you didn't lock me in the basement all those years ago. So the young hero gets some relief when he finally sits down at the kitchen table with Mr. Johnson. All of a sudden, all that fear that he's built up is, I could still get, hit with the shotgun later, but right now we're eating hot. I'm doing okay. And then he develops a close relationship with Mr. Johnson. Spends the whole summer. So what happened to Mr. Johnson at the end of that? Well, who knows? The kid went back to school. It's entirely possible that after that year of school that he'd already forgotten all about Mr. Johnson. The teachers cramming other things in his head. Knowledge is like an ice flow. The information is like penguins. Or I should say the brain is like this. Information is like penguins. You can only fit so many penguins on an ice floe. And the older you get, the more the ice floe melts, and some of those penguins just fall off. That's free.
That explains so much.
Oh, yeah. That one's free.
How's that one the penguins do?
Well, whatever they knew. So you get something new, something old goes and then we have that escalation in this story. What is that escalation? Well, when he steps on the porch, whoa, all of a sudden, my fear has gone up because now it's inevitable, especially when I find out that that's just a screen door.
But he saw these steps before that.
Oh, yeah, he did. So that's building up that escalation. And the resolution pushed past his fear and formed a relationship with Mr. Johnson. So what's the whole point of the story? You write it on the back of a business card. Push past your fears, real or imagined, for the possibility of a reward. Doesn't mean you're going to get a reward. It just means you have the possibility. Oh, let's see. That was the story. And these are other stories. So there's an old house, but I don't see a gravel road. So that's other things. Oh, that's right. This is an old PowerPoint. I updated it since. This is the story about camping with the raccoon. This one is my dog Max. That's a really neat story. And this one is about never give up. And it's really not about squirrels, although the squirrel is taking a center stage in that story. So we did the analysis. I was supposed to be pressing the button. Read fast. We're going to
Easy.
easy. So who's this button? Okay. Now, I want to give you some tips for writing stories. Number one, keep a notebook with you at all times, not just when it's convenient. I use my iPhone because it's always here. And it's got this neat feature. You can press on the microphone and tell it what you want. So what I keep is mostly ideas. Something that happened to me in the past that I may want to bring it up again. Also, I'm sitting in a group of people and they say something that's kind of fun. Go open up that notebook, press it, and put it in. Because Good ideas are like butterflies. They're only with you for 15 seconds and then they're gone.
I don't get that.
They're gone, like that fever. He's gone. You'll never get him back. So one example of an idea that I wrote in, canned food roulette. Now that doesn't mean anything to y'all, but it was a story about when my brothers and I were young. I was in the 7th grade in the local grocery store called Fire. What do firemen do when the grocery store catches fire? They go in there with their hoses and they wash all the cans off the shelf. And what happens when they wash the cans off the shelf? The labels come off. Well, we were very industrious. And we went to the trash can and we gathered every can that looked like it was intact and took them home and spent the next 2 months playing canned food roulette. You have 2 cans that look about the same, thinking maybe they have the same food in them.
Now,
They either have peas or peas. Okay, that's lucky. And if not, you're hoping they have 2 things that go together, like peas and carrots. And if not, then you make up a recipe, like pineapple upside down beans.
you need to go through.
And spam soup. All right, we talk about that message written on the back of the business card. When you are going to flush out your story, write it out word for word. I use a word processor, so I change it. And the other thing that I do is, doing a speech contest, I create a version for each level. Don't erase the old version. And I label it that way. Club level, area level, division level. If you make it past that, and then you're good. So what you're doing is you're learning from what you might have heard the audience or how you felt while you gave, what was my audience's reaction, and you're making changes to that story so that it comes across better. Maybe you have a better chance of coming in front. The other reason to write it down is you may have an opportunity to reuse the good stuff. I've reused speeches. I did a presentation on robotics for the San Antonio Manufacturers Association. And the University of Houston caught wind of that presentation and wanted me to come give the same presentation, but it's a different audience, so you want to change it for that audience. And a person there said, oh, can you come to our high school and give this presentation to a bunch of 8th graders?
Oh, geez.
You talk about a tough crowd. Yep, I have eaten out of my head. Because I changed the presentation to fit that audience. It was so loud and raucous that other teachers wanted to know what's happening in that room. So that was all. Oh, like I said, this is an old PowerPoint. My new one is in a thumb drive. One of the techniques that I had in my word processor was to press character return every time I needed to take a breath. It doesn't read well, but it reminds you this is a complete. So some of these things, and then read books to your children or grandchildren, or go to the library and volunteer for story hour. Winnie the Pooh is a really neat book that I read to my kids because it has a lot of characters and you have to change your voice depending on who's speaking. And your kids are going to pick up on that if you don't change the voice correctly. So you have Winnie the Pooh and you have how many weeks does it take to get to the 7th? All right, so contest speech. Who here is planning on being in the contest at some? I got a half a commitment is better than no commitment at all. Sometimes your speech has an emotional element to it. spouse died, my brother died, my father died, something like that. And it could trigger you in the middle of your speech as you're on stage, and you could break down. And your audience, as much as they want to empathize with you, are gonna get a little lost and feel that. So you want to practice that section until your brain can get through it without breaking down. You want to show a little emotion, but you don't want to break down. My brother died and I just couldn't take it anymore. Now you've lost your audience. So practice that. Now it sounds cold and heartless, but you got to do it. You're here to communicate with your audience. Remember this, the larger the audience, the easier it is to get them to laugh. Unless you're on Zoom, then you can't get them to laugh at all. They just little black squares, that's it. Now, the inverse of that, the longer it takes to slow them down so you can continue. Remember, you only got 7 minutes. Watch that laughter, leave room for it, or do some trick. David Henderson told me that during his speech, he couldn't cut the speech short. He knew the audience would laugh, so he tricked on the stage, and they always and he stopped laughing, and he could continue. He did win international. When your audience is laughing, let them finish. Don't talk over their laughter. You know, they came to have a good time, and they can't hear you if you're talking and they're laughing. I know you only have 7 minutes. You just gotta make time. You have stories within you. All of you have experiences. But how do you find those stories? Who can help me find the story?
Right, memories.
Memories, experiences.
Something remind you of it.
So what have you done? When my brothers and I were younger, we found an old army tank. I think it was a Patton. In a field, we lived in Germany at the time, a lot of bombed out ordnance. I don't know why it was there, but there weren't any adults around to tell us, don't climb on that hazardous piece of equipment. We spent the whole day on that army tank. So what have you done? What do you like to do? Kayaking, skydiving. Oh, I'd love to hear a story about skydiving. I'm not jumping in perfectly. And then one guy showed me a picture. He said, see that? That is not a perfectly good airplane. So what have you done? Well, I traveled by airplane to Idaho. We had a layover in Las Vegas. That was interesting. Do you have stories within you? And I want to hear them. Your fellow Toastmasters want to hear them. Write them down, polish them, and deliver them like a fresh baked apple. I have 1 minute.
Oh my God. You gotta get out.
You'll have a 14-minute break before the next session.
You started half a minute late though, so you're sharing the pie.
I have a question for you, Dave.
So to answer this question and then yours, I made this pie out of styrofoam and clay.
You're amazing.
Jim, I have a question for you. You've been a judge probably at every level, all the way even to. So as a judge, when you hear good stories and you find that have all the elements that you're talking about in two contestants, what pushes that edge that you say this one's better than the other? What is the one element?
So one element that I look for as a judge, how did you deliver that message? Did you fiddle with your jacket trying to get your bottom shirt out a lot? Or did you bend down and reach underneath to get your prop out? Did you do something like that that detracts from your message? I look for that. Did you come dressed to give a presentation to an audience of people? Or did you show up wearing last year's old shoes, jeans with holes in them, and a shirt that your mother forgot to wash? Or are you dressed to give a presentation? All of our presenters last night were spot on when it comes to dress, spot on when it comes to use of the stage. So the presentation makes a big difference.
Yeah.